What's going on, guys? Welcome back to Bullony Basketball. Here with Johnny. How's it going, Johnny?
What's going on, Garrett? Doing well, doing well. We've got a week of, well, not quite a week, but a couple games of Harden and KD together. And tonight, as we record this episode, we'll get to see Harden plus KD plus Kyrie, so that should be interesting. Just another week in the association, another week of stuff to talk about, so I'm excited to get into it. How are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. As you mentioned, we're recording this on Wednesday, so if anything crazy happens later tonight or tomorrow, we'll probably cover that next week. But we do have a lot of stuff that we have to talk about here. First one, and I mean, we've seen some injuries already with certain teams, but I mean, this team was kind of plagued by injuries last season. That's why it was so hard for them to make the playoffs. And that's the Portland Trail Blazers. CJ McCollum, he's going to miss probably around 4 weeks with a fractured foot. Yusuf Nurkic will miss like 6 to 8 weeks with a fractured wrist. And that's what's seen by most people as like their second and third best players. So what do you think? How do you think this affects the Trailblazers, and how much do you think it puts on Dame's shoulders?
Yeah, I think it quite clearly puts a ton on Dame's shoulders to see what he can do. I don't think people are questioning what he can do, but it's just such an uphill battle. The West is a lot stronger this year, so an uphill battle to climb. The one thing I found interesting is, so a couple years ago they made the Western Conference Finals against the Warriors, and they didn't win, but many thought that the team was headed in the right direction. Since that Western Conference Finals, the preferred lineup that many consider, what many consider to be the preferred lineup of Lillard, McCollum, Rodney Hood, Zach Collins, and Yusuf Nurkic, they've played a combined 0 minutes together. They just can't stay on the court. They can't stay healthy. Hood's battled through injuries. CJ's now injured. Collins has been injured, and so is Nurkic. So it's a cruel world we live in with injuries. Obviously, wish them nothing but Godspeed in their health and recovery, but it's going to be a very large uphill battle for Lillard and the Trailblazers to climb.
I think you could even say to an extent that they improve because, like, yeah, now like Robert Covington is starting and Derrick Jones Jr. is starting, and Hood, who was supposed to be in the starting lineup, is coming off the bench. But like you said, they've had a ton of injuries. Even last year, like I believe Dame missed like a month right before the end of the season before like COVID hit. CJ had like back problems earlier in the season, and then he had one right around the playoffs as he was like playing through it. But like I think this team is dealing with a ton of injuries. They're almost like cursed in a sense. I mean, it even goes back to like their draft history and traded draft picks. Like they're almost as cursed. But I will say that looking at their schedule for at least the next 4 weeks when CJ is supposed to miss, it seems like these aren't too bad of games. I believe they play the Bucks, the Sixers twice, and then they play the Mavericks. But other than that, I don't think there's that many games that I don't even think there's any other games against teams that are currently in the playoff picture except Memphis. But I mean, they did beat out Memphis last year, and I'd say that this Portland team's even a little bit better than they were last season. So I think that they will be okay. I think they'll at least be able to hold their ground for the time being, but it does kind of suck. And if they do exceed expectations, then maybe this is a sign for Lillard pushing an MVP case. So I guess we'll see.
Yeah, I think quickly the other thing to consider is just we're in a shorter year, so by nature each game is worth a bit more than it has been in the past. So any extended period of time missed by these two players is obviously going to hurt them a lot. So obviously hoping that McCollum isn't much longer than those 4 weeks, and then Nurkic is on the shorter end of those 6 to 8 weeks.
Yeah, and I mean, like I said, I guess we'll see. They're pretty much just a cursed franchise. I mean, you can go back to like when they drafted Sam Bowie over Michael Jordan or Greg Oden over Kevin Durant. Like they just seem very unlucky. Injuries with Brandon Roy, but I mean, we'll see. I think that they'll still be able to obviously get in the playoffs. They haven't missed it 1 year since Dame and CJ have been on the roster together, so we'll just see. But on the other end of things, we were just talking about teams they could play, and one of them was the Memphis Grizzlies. And it seems like lately they've been building great off their last season. They started off a bit slow. Of course, John Morant was hurt, but now they got Ja back, and they've currently won 5 straight. So what do you think of the Memphis Grizzlies? I know you were pretty high on them before the season started.
Yeah, I like Memphis. Listen, I like Ja a lot. I really like what Memphis has done in the draft the last couple of years. Obviously, getting Ja at number 2 is great and something that we considered, or something that we thought was going to happen. But even this year, they drafted two older players. So basically, what I like to call 2 veteran rookies, however you want to say, and guys, Xavier Tillman and Desmond Bane. Desmond Bane being a senior out of TCU and Xavier Tillman, a junior out of Michigan State. So you have 2 guys with some experience. They might not have ever played in the NBA before, but they have 3-4 years of college experience under their belt, which gives them an advantage there. And they have dealt with injuries. Brandon Clark's had to step in a lot for Jonas, which then in turn has pushed Xavier Tillman for more minutes. De'Anthony Melton's playing well. So they have some pieces. Outside of Ja right now, they don't necessarily have, somebody that may be a budding star or superstar. That obviously all depends on what happens with Jaren Jackson Jr. when he comes back. But they have pieces to build around those 2, which I think is setting him up nice for the future. And then even just looking at that little 5-game win streak, 3 of those 5 wins were good wins against quality teams in Phoenix, the 76ers, and the Nets. So certainly trending in the right direction. We'll see if they can keep it up. I think Memphis is building their team through the draft and doing it the right way.
So I think with the Grizzlies is that it's even more impressive. They've had kind of an inconsistent lineup. Like you said, they've had injuries to all these other people, but it's been like spaced out. Like they haven't had Jaren Jackson Jr. all year. Ja's missed the past few games other than like the most recent one. And De'Anthony Melton didn't start the year for him. He was missing some games. Jonas Valanciunas missed some games. So they've had like a ton of dudes that have been missing. And what I've thought pretty much the whole time is, like with Jaren Jackson Jr., his impact was, it was much needed for them to get into the playoff picture last year when they were in the bubble. As for John Morant, I think his impact was probably the biggest and the one that transformed them to be in the playoff push. Of course, with like many other injuries that year. But what I will say is that like without both of them, and going on 4 straight wins, and like you said, teams that they beat, I don't think they beat Phoenix in that time because they just played them, but like they beat Philadelphia, they beat Brooklyn. Like those aren't bad. Those are pretty good teams. So it's like that's impressive in that part, and I think the culture is starting to like carry over to some of these guys. Like you wouldn't think, guys like Kyle Anderson or Grayson Allen or like you said Desmond Bane and stuff would be the guys down the stretch for them. And they have been, and they've been playing pretty well. So I got to give them credit there. I definitely haven't been as high on them as you have necessarily, but I think that they're trending in the right direction.
I think a long-term question for him is just where does Jaren Jackson end up playing in the future? Is it the 4 or the 5? So we obviously haven't seen him in a bit due to injury. Kind of makes me lean the 4, but I think he could also play the stretch 5 at some point.
Yeah, and so moving on now, we had some special debuts this past week. Obviously, James Harden with the Nets. He's played a few games with them. And we saw Victor Oladipo, his debut with the Houston Rockets. Harden, going for 32 points, 14 assists, 12 rebounds, and 4 steals in his first game. And Oladipo matching the 32 points, but got 9 assists, 5 rebounds, and 2 steals. What did you make of each of their debuts?
Yeah, I think there's more to talk about with Harden just because we expect Harden to be. Well, we don't expect. We know Harden's the focal point of the trade, and that was the reason for all this going down. I think Harden's going to excel in Brooklyn. KD can play off the ball some, and so I think that's going to allow Harden to at least dominate the ball in terms of bringing it up and facilitating. What I found very interesting is during their first game together, both Harden and KD had a usage north of 30%, with the next closest player being Joe Harris at 14%. So it was KD at like 34.6% and Harden at 36%, and then Joe Harris at 14%. So we expect the ball to be in Harden and KD's hands, and then whatever hit Joe Harris on some spot-up threes. what I'm really interested in is where does Kyrie Irving fit? Do each of these three players' usages hover somewhere in the mid-20s? Because it's not realistic to have three players with usage north of 30, which then leaves less than 10% to go around the rest of the team. So we should be able to see what happens tonight. We should be getting some of those answers or some of those questions answered tonight. But I think Harden's looked well in Brooklyn, and then even that last game when they beat the Bucks as well, Harden came out and showed. So I think the prospects look good there. Certainly the most talented team in the East now. Do you think that they're the favorites coming out of the East? Are they your favorites coming out of the East? How do you see this all shuffling out?
Well, for me, I mean, based on the first or second episode, whenever we picked, I had the Nets coming out of the East. Of course, they lost a lot of depth from the Harden trade, but adding a guy like James Harden, you're just going to have so much talent on that team in that big three that it's going to be hard to bet against them. And we haven't really seen the big three together yet for me to judge against them either. They've already been playing well with Harden and Durant. So I'm going to stick with that for the time being. I mean, if I start seeing some concerning signs, and maybe I might lean towards like Milwaukee or something like that. But I'm going to stick with them for the time being. I think Harden, it seems like he almost has a different game in Brooklyn, and it seems like a game that's going to be more geared towards winning. Sometimes it seemed like with Houston, in the later years, he was just kind of sick of it, trying to do whatever he wanted. Now it seems like he's almost trying to he can take a step back, but he can also do what he wants whenever it's called upon. So, I mean, we'll see what happens once Kyrie gets there as well. Like you said, I think that's going to be pretty interesting. And they don't really have the same depth, like I said. I think they might target a guy like Kenneth Faried. I saw that in rumors, but because they kind of need another big. I think we talked about once their backup five right now is Jeff Green. So I don't know how that's really going to fly. But I think that the Nets right now are currently, I mean, they should be the favorites in the East. And, I mean, it's not really much of a contest when your third best player is Kyrie Irving. I mean, no other team in the league has something like that. As for quickly with Oladipo, I think that he has been slightly under the radar recently. I know because the Pacers, obviously with Malcolm Brogdon and Sabonis, it seems like they're the 1-2 punch now. Oladipo gets traded, and then it seems like people forget about him. But, I mean, this Rockets team, I mean, he's still playing for a contract as well. I mean, if he just, takes it easy, takes a step back, will the Miami Heat even be interested at the end of the year to try and go get him? Because that's what it seems like right now. But if he's, taking a step back, being nonchalant, then who knows? They might not even go after that. They might not give him the big money that he probably expects from Miami. So he's got to still be playing his best. And at his best, he's an all-star, an all-NBA caliber player if, of course, the team is successful. That's usually what it depends on, unless you're, like a LeBron-level talent or Kevin Durant or something like that. But I think that Oladipo is still, when healthy, a really good player and definitely an all-star caliber player.
Yeah, I think you hit on it right at the beginning, the contract year. I don't think many of us or many people around the league necessarily expect Oladipo to remain in Houston long term beyond this year. And in order for him to fulfill his dreams and get his bag, as he will, and necessarily get the destination he wants, then he has to show out the remainder of this year, show that he's healthy, show that he can still play at a high level, and that'll do it. And so I think we're going to see him put up some big box scores because he really is probably, he may be that go-to scorer now. I mean, Christian Wood's on the team, but Christian Wood benefits from somebody getting him the ball. Oladipo's able to bring the ball up and create his own shot. So I expect more big games from Oladipo similar to the one we saw.
Yeah, and I mean, there's plenty. I know, like you said, he might not stay in Houston, but there's plenty of time for them to, turn around things there and maybe even make a playoff push. They're only 2 games out, and we're literally in, the end of the first month of the season. I still remember, in 2010, 2011, when the Rose won MVP, the Bulls were, I think 9 games back of the Spurs with, a month and a half left in the year, and then they ended up getting a better record than them. So, literally, I always look at that for anything's possible with the standings changing. We still have, 4 more months until the regular season's over, maybe 3.5. So, I mean, to make up 2 games in that time is very possible. We'll see, like, once, John Wall gets back, once DeMarcus Cousins is playing again. They could be a sleeper team. Like, I wouldn't count them out.
Yeah, I'm not necessarily going to count them out, but I'm going to count them out from a top 4 or 5 seed that was once possible with James Harden. There's still the prospects that they could, get a 7, 8 seed. But I'm going to, with some assurity, count them out of a top end seed without James Harden.
Yeah, I just think maybe even as a lower seed, the whole West playoffs is going to be tough. Anyone can beat anyone on any given night. So, we'll see how that turns out. Now, something that we're going to have a fun time talking about with the Chicago Bulls is Lauri Markkanen, who's been playing out of his mind, especially since he came back from the injury. I believe he had 29 points against the Dallas Mavericks. And this season, he's averaging a career high in scoring, and his shooting splits are pretty much at an all-time high. How much of a difference do you think Billy Donovan has been on Lauri Markkanen as opposed to, Jim Boylen was?
Well, I think Billy's helped by getting him the ball more, but I think a lot of it can also just be attributed to the increase in play from Zach LaVine, where LaVine's playing much better than he's ever played. So defenses are focusing on him more, which is creating more space and in turn getting Lauri more shots. Coby White's much improved this year. A veteran in Garrett Temple who's coming in and giving good minutes, and then Thad Young is able to distribute the ball as a big as well. So you have that happening, and then the thing I like about Billy Donovan is he's trying to get Lauri Markkanen going very early in games. He's drawing up plays at the beginning of the game to get Lauri the first shot. Doing that just instills a bunch of confidence in players, and it seems like it's certainly helping Lauri. He's not rebounding as much, which can be attributed to a couple things. It could be that he's just on the perimeter more often, or it could be that Wendell's just taking out more of those opportunities. What he is doing, though, is hitting three-pointers at a rate that he's never seen before. He's shooting them at a 40% clip. His career average before this hovered around 34, 35%, so big increase there. And he's getting to the free throw line more. He's averaging another 1.5 free throws per game. His free throw percentage or his free throw attempts per game are 1.5 more than his career high up until this year. So that certainly helps as well. To have another point or another free point or two every game doesn't hurt. And so I think it's just things like that. It's little things like that. Billy Donovan getting him early shots, LaVine helping him get some open looks. Your numbers are going to look a lot better when you're getting more open looks than you have in the past, and he's not needing to force up as many shots, which I think is certainly helping.
Yeah, I think definitely LaVine's play has helped with Markkanen, but it just seems like his confidence right now is at an all-time high. Like sometimes he'd be really hesitant to shoot. Now he's not even thinking about it on the three-point line or, even driving to the basket, which he didn't really do much of last season at all under Jim Boylen. So I think that's definitely a plus. As for the rebounding aspect, I wouldn't worry about it too much. You still have guys like Thad Young, Gafford, Wendell Carter who are going to be crashing. And usually on offense, I believe Otto Porter and Garrett Temple are usually crashing the basket as well. So I wouldn't be worrying about it too much. I believe he's still averaging like 7 a game, which is not too bad. For a guy that's usually around the perimeter, we've seen like players like that, like Porzingis, for example. He's roughly around there as well. So I'm not too worried about that. I think that his shooting, though, has been very impressive, and it makes him extremely hard to guard. And you put him kind of in a similar family with someone like Kristaps Porzingis. And I don't know about you, but it seems like he's also at least a little bit more motivated this year. He might not be at an all-time high, but a little more motivated this year on the defensive end. It looks like right now, like especially inside the paint, him and Wendell have been doing a pretty decent job so far. So I'm looking forward to what Markkanen has coming forward. If he can keep playing like this, if Coby can keep playing how he has most of the season. I know his last few games have been rough, but the early parts of the season, and if LaVine's playing like this as well, there's a good chance they'll get into at least the play-in, but I'd like to see the playoffs.
Yeah, certainly. And I'm actually pulling up his defensive numbers for this year to kind of see where he is.
His offensive numbers are obviously a lot greater. So we've seen his offensive rating his first 3 years was 107, 107, 108. This year he's at 116, so it's clear he's taking a jump there. Defensive rating 110, 112, 110, and this year 113. So once again, better. So in terms of his average, his defensive rating is 2 points higher than his average. His offensive rating is 11 points higher than his average, which is great to see. We've even seen his BPM be positive for the first time in his career. It's always been negative, where his defense has just been so atrocious that even a decent offensive year hasn't been enough to catapult him into a positive BPM, so that's good. Win shares per 48, much higher than his career average. So he's looked like he's looked like a different player, simply put, and I think he's trending in the right direction as well. So Bulls fans should be excited about that.
Yeah, and another thing I want to point out is something I saw when watching, I believe when the Bulls were playing Dallas or OKC in the past week. They showed a stat with the highest, offensive rating increases over the past, from last season to this season, and the Bulls right now rank first. And you look at the second and third and fourth team, it's like, I believe it's the Wizards, the Warriors, the Nets. I mean, they all added key pieces as well. I mean, of course, Westbrook's missed time, but they all added something, pretty outlandish. I mean, we didn't add much. We added, Patrick Williams and Garrett Temple. So, we are more healthy. So I think that's another thing that people have to consider is that we haven't really been a healthy team over the last several years. And, if we are, I think there's a good chance we could be competing for a playoff spot.
And not to mention, players we added aren't offensive-minded players, right?
Right.
Patrick Williams is raw of a prospect as they come, never started a game in college, known for his defense. Garrett Temple is just a vet's veteran, as they say, somebody that's bounced around. He's not coming in and lighting it up offensively. So that increase is attributed to three players in my mind. It's Coby, it's LaVine, and it's Lauri. And between the three of them, they've each had career years thus far, and it's certainly helped with their offensive rating and the difference in offensive rating between last year and this year.
Yeah, and as Bulls fans, I think I can speak for both of us in saying that hopefully it continues for the rest of the season. But we're going to move on now. We're going to move on to close the show with the daily picks. Starting with January 22nd, the Magic Pacers. Who do you got on this one?
Yeah, I like the Pacers.
It seems like anything the Magic have had going just has been shut down due to injuries. No Markelle Fultz, no Jonathan Isaac. Cole Anthony being their point guard and really the only guy on this team capable of creating a shot is not a good thing. So it's severely limiting the upside of Aaron Gordon, and then you're able to just double reach down low and not worry about James Ennis or Dwayne Bacon killing you from the outside. So I'm going to go with the Pacers.
Yeah, I got Indiana as well. The Magic don't really have much offensively. They lost Fultz. They also lost Fournier, which I feel like a lot of people haven't been talking about. So, I got Indiana. As for the 23rd, we got the Lakers and the Bulls. Who are you taking on this one?
Yeah, I like the Lakers. Once again, doesn't matter if AD sits, doesn't matter if LeBron sits. Having one of those two is enough for them to beat the Bulls. I know the Bulls played them tough last game, but they played a near perfect game and still lost. So I'm going to go with the Lakers.
Yeah, and because of that game, I wanted to pick the Bulls, but obviously I just can't. The Lakers have been pretty much invincible on the road so far this season. So until they lose, I'm going to have to go with them until proven otherwise. As for the 24th, which is also my birthday, we got the Knicks and Trailblazers. Who you got in this one?
I'm going to go with the Blazers. Knicks have played solid basketball, but I'm still not sure that they're a very good team. So I'm going to go with the Blazers. And as you said, near invincible, the Lakers on the road. They have not lost the game on the road. All of their losses have come at Staples Center on their home floor. Just a quick little tidbit there. But go ahead. Blazers or Knicks for yourself on your birthday?
Yeah, I'm going to take Portland. I think Dame's going to have to show up big time. And yeah, like you said, the Knicks, we still have to see a little bit more for us to believe in them like that. As for the 25th, we got the Raptors and Pacers. Another Pacers game, but who do you got?
I'm gonna go with the Raptors here. I think Raptors are starting to trend in the right direction. What we didn't talk about with the Pacers is now there's no Oladipo and two Miles Turner's out now with an injury. So you're missing those players, and your team's centered around Brogdon and Sabonis still, but there's still no T.J. Warren. So it's really Brogdon, Sabonis, and a bunch of role complementary players. Raptors appear to be playing a little bit better now, and I don't expect them to necessarily be as bad as they have been all year. So I'm going to go with the Raptors.
Yeah, I think it's kind of a coin toss per se with the Pacers' injuries. The way they've been playing has been great, but obviously missing Turner and stuff's going to hurt. I'm going to go with Indiana, though. Last time the Raptors played the Pacers, I believe the Raptors won, but it was a very close game. But like in Indiana, but of course that was last season. Things have a bit changed, but I'm going to go with Indiana on this one. But moving on now to the 26th, we have the Wizards and Rockets. Who do you got in this one?
I like the Rockets. Any game the Wizards win these days is going to have to come at the hands of Bradley Beal just going on a ridiculous stretch, putting up 35, 40 points, 10 assists, something along those lines. I just think the Rockets are too much.
Yep, I got Houston as well, and I don't really have much to add there. 27th, we have the Mavericks and the Jazz. Who you got in this one?
This might be the best or one of the best games we have picked this week. I think this is a close one. Utah is playing like the third best team in the West. Neither of us necessarily expected them to be the third best team in the West. Playing really well. Looks like Mike Conley settled in. I like Utah here. Could easily see Dallas coming in and winning the game, but I like Utah. I think Utah can throw enough bodies at Luka, and Quinn Snyder is one of the better coaches in the league, just as is Rick Carlisle, but I like what Utah can do defensively to combat what Luka does.
Yeah, I got the Jazz as well. I think when they're fully healthy, there's a really good case that they're a top 3 team in the Western Conference. I mean, last year they weren't healthy, and they almost took down the Nuggets. They were up 3-1. They were missing Bogdanovich, missed Conley half the series, so I don't know. I think that this year it might be a turn in the right direction for the Utah Jazz and maybe taking the next step that they haven't got in the past few seasons. But we're going to move on to the last game now, the 28th, between the Warriors and Phoenix. What do you got in this one?
Yeah, I expect this one to be a shootout. I like the Warriors here. I think Phoenix is playing good ball, but I like what the Warriors have done. And if Kelly Oubre can continue to work in the right direction, Steve Kerr said he's going to start to give him some more time with the second unit, which in turn gives Oubre a lot more freedom, a lot more time to find his footing. Wiggins is having, I guess, a career year, if you will, playing a lot better defensively. So I like what the Warriors can do. Eric Pascal's playing well off the bench. And Draymond Green is Draymond Green. He's not going to put up the stats that blow you out of the water, but he's such a stabilizer for the team, and I like what he does. So I'm going to go with Golden State.
Yeah, I got the Warriors as well. They just had a few tough losses recently, but, they've also shown against teams like the Lakers and the Clippers that even if they're down big, they can come back on any given night. But I'm going to take the Warriors here, and I believe the only difference that we had was that Raptors-Pacers game where I took Indiana and you took Toronto. So that's going to decide who wins the week, basically.
That's right, so we have to wait until January 25th to determine the winner of this week's pick'em.
Facts. But that's going to close out the show. I hope you guys enjoyed. Any final thoughts?
Nothing big, nothing overarching. Same thing as it is most weeks. First off, guys, thanks for the support. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Anything you guys want us to talk about, drop that below in the comments. We'll take a look through. But no, we get to see Kyrie come back, and I think that's going to be the big story this week is how do those three coexist. Other than that, it's just a lot of teams competing outside of the top 2, top 3 in each conference for those final seeds. So I think we're going to see that throughout the whole season, and really interested to continue to analyze it.
Yeah, like you said, I'm looking forward to Kyrie coming back as well, and I'm looking forward to the Bulls winning some more. They're on a 2-game win streak right now, so hopefully they can continue that. But thank you guys for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed, and we're out. Peace.
Peace.